It's my pleasure to introduce our first conversation between grandmother Mona Polacca and Miriam Volat. Welcome. They will be discussing Indigenous and ecological reflections on the roots of plant medicine. Grandmother Mona Polacca is of Havasupai, Hopi, and Tewa tribal lineage. That's the region around the Grand Canyon in northern Arizona. She's a founding member of the International Council of 13 Grandmothers, Indigenous grandmothers, excuse me. And that's an alliance upholding and protecting Indigenous spiritual practices and beliefs. Yes. She's an educator and active in preserving Indigenous water and culturally appropriate health treatments for Native Americans. Yes. Miriam Volat is an ecologist with a passion for soils and nutrient cycles, and she works internationally and nationally to increase health in policy and community design. She's an initiating staff and the director for IMC Fund, Indigenous Medicine Conservation Fund, of which Grandmother Polacca is a decision maker as well. She also serves on the board of the Indigenous Peyote Conservation Initiative and is the staff, the Indigenous Peyote Conservation Initiative, and co-director of River Styx Foundation. Please help me welcome our distinguished guests. We'll pause in 30 minutes for questions and answers, and microphones will be throughout the stage if you have a question.
Gamunya. I greet you all. I'm Mona Polacca, and I come from the Havasupai people, the people of the blue-green water from down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. On my mother's side, I'm Hopi and Tewa. On my father's side, my clans on my mother's side is from the water, and on my father's side, I come from the Sun Clan and Tobacco Clan. I'm grateful to be here, and I give thanks to the ancestors of the land here that were mentioned, as well as also to the good Creator for all the this good day that we have here, and all the divine creations, the water, the air, the fire, the earth, all these things that give us our life. And I'm grateful to be able to speak to each one of you and be a part of this convening of psychedelic culture. And I'm here as a grandmother of, I have grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and I'm also here because having that kind of sacred responsibility is what I uphold. That's what I'm upholding by being here today. And as well as of the many other Indigenous people who are not privileged to be able to leave their home places and be able to be a voice for their people. As was mentioned, sometimes we are faced with barriers, geographical barriers, but also barriers that are established by by man-made laws. When historically Indigenous people have been able to travel wherever we needed to travel throughout our traditional lands and territories. And so I'm acknowledging those folks that are faced with these kind of issues. But here today, you know, I'm here to speak about the way that the teachings that I come from, my lived experience as an Indigenous person, and the teachings that have been given to me, as well as Indigenous worldview that has been put forward in many, many ways, including our use of our medicines, our sacred medicines, and the medicines that are being discussed here at this conference, and the challenges that we face in regard to this psychedelic culture. We as Indigenous people, we have a culture. Part of our culture includes our medicine, our health. In culture, you have a language, you have a way of governance, we have a way of the kind of traditional foods you eat. You have your spiritual practices and beliefs, and you have your relationship with where you come from and the teachings and the origins that are related to that. That's our culture. You're talking about a psychedelic culture, which I am not really familiar with at all, mainly because of my interpretation or my definition as an Indigenous person of culture comes from those kind of our origins, and so in my teachings, the teachings that have been passed on to me, we were given what we call original instructions on how to live in this world, instructions on what we would need to take care of in order for us to have our what is called, our basic survival in this world on Mother Earth. And part of that instruction is how we take care of these gifts that are given to us for our life. And so we were told that these gifts that come from our mother, we must honor them, we must respect them. They are life forms just like us, as well as giving us life. And in the case of these medicines, there are certain ways about how we have this relationship with them. This medicine, these plant-based medicine, earth-based medicine, they have a connection to the earth. They have a home that they come from. There's a certain connection, there's a certain gift that or an exchange of what Mother Earth in that specific place gives to that plant, and how the climate is there, how the sun shines on it, how the rains come to it and give it water. It's all based on a cycle, and there's a cycle of its life where it has a time when it's mature and ready to be harvested. And there's a way to harvest it, a special way. There are certain songs, offerings, maybe even a dance that is made, and there's a certain way of how it's taken from its home, its place. And those are some of the things that are very important if there's going to be use of these medicines, and it looks like it's going to be, what I'm seeing is it's being done on a mass scale. But if you were to look at where the home place of these medicines come from, Does it have the capacity to meet the demand that is being created on a mass scale? These are some of the concerns that Indigenous people have today about how is this medicine going to sustain itself, its existence, when there is such a huge mass demand that is being created. And so what the instructions that we were given is to be a reminder. We were told in our prophecies that there was going to come a time when the people who have forgotten about their relationship with these divine creations, the basic foundations of water, air, fire, earth, when they've lost that connection, but then there's going to come a time when they're going to remember and think, I need to come back to this, what Mother Earth has to give to me in order to heal, in order to be healthy, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. We were told this was going to come. And that we as Indigenous people, the ones who remember and the ones who have been upholding these original instructions and caring for our home place, that we would have that responsibility to be a gentle reminder to the people who are beginning to remember. But that there's a teaching, and that teaching is that we must be careful. We must be careful about how we approach it. We must be considerate of the others who use these medicines. And part of the International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers, one of our work has been to preserve and protect our earth-based medicine. And part of that preserving and protecting it means that we must be able to make sure that our children, our grandchildren, our future generations, the ones that are yet to come, the ones we will not see, that they will have access to the gift of these medicines that we use. So when you make your decisions and your efforts to have access, please consider that we too, as Indigenous people, we have our children, our generations, that have that sacred connection right there at their home, our home place. And over the generations, from time immemorial, we've had this sacred relationship with these medicines and the teachings that go along with them, that we must pass on and leave for our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and the coming generations. Please consider that, because that's all part of reciprocity, that's all part of respect, that's all part of maintaining balance. And maybe you have come in contact with these medicines and have had an experience with it that you know that it's wonderful. It's done something good for you. That you feel like you have to throw it out there for everybody. But it's not candy. It has a life cycle. We don't want to see it become extinct. We must look at what have we done in regard to some of these other things, life on Mother Earth, the animal life, the plant life, the water life, even our own people, our own human beings. What have we done that has caused harm by how we treat them? Take a look at that. We say, learn from it. Learn. How do you learn? What did you see? What do you see happening in the world today? What do you hear? What are you hearing from the indigenous people? They're saying, be careful. Slow down. That's what you're hearing. That's the words. That's the message they're giving. What do you think when you hear these things? Think about it. How do you feel? Feel, have compassion. Have compassion. Feel for the elders, the ones that were here before us, the ones that have passed that knowledge on to us. And in some kind, gentle way, there have been some of our indigenous people who have maybe they saw something good in you, that they went ahead and shared the medicine with you. Maybe they went ahead and let you live with them for years. And you watched them, see how they do things. And then assumed that this gives you that right to take that medicine and become an administrator of it. Those are some of the concerns that indigenous people are speaking about, coming forward about. There are certain things that have been put in place because of indigenous people's efforts. There's such a thing as called the Nagoya Protocols. If you haven't heard about it, take a look at it. There are such things as the Permanent Forum, the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous People. There are such things as the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. In that declaration that has been adopted by the United Nations, including the United States, that specifically speak to the rights of indigenous people in relation to our spiritual practices and beliefs and our medicine. Take a look at that. Take a look at that as you move forward. Because the appearance to us is that you are only taking what you want. And it's difficult. It's a challenge for us because with a good heart, good mind, good spirit, in peace and friendship that the indigenous people have shared these medicine ways with you. So please, give those things consideration. Thank you. Escali.
Thank you, Mona. Can you hear me? It's working? Okay. Well, I also am grateful to be here this morning. Hello to everybody. I live in this area. I live about an hour and a half north of here, so it was really nice to be in kind of home territory. And my job this morning is to support Mona. Like was shared, Mona is one of the decision makers on what we call the Indigenous Medicine Conservation Fund, which is the decisions about where funding to go into Indigenous-led conservation efforts all over the world, Africa, South America, Mexico, the United States, are made by territorial people from those places. And I wanted to share this morning a little bit from the ecological perspective. So I had the good fortune of getting to study ecology in school and have continued to study ecology, which is the study of our home. And it's really the study of relationships, the relationships between individuals, their community, their populations, their territory, their biosphere. And for me, in being of service to Indigenous medicine conservation, I find that it gives me some really good principles to help make decisions by. And it's a language that is helpful for understanding how to place the health of the earth and the people who are really territorial, people connected to the earth first in our decision making. And so some of those principles that I heard when Mona was speaking as a way of for us to understand how to have harmony and balance. One is interconnectedness. So we know that in all ecosystems, everything, all the organisms, the nutrient cycles, the flows, the life cycles of the different plants, the relationships between all of that and humans, which are part of those ecosystems, are interconnected. And so this principle helps us remember to have respect, that each of those beings and organisms in that place and in our whole biosphere, in fact, are of equal importance. They may need different things, just like in a family when you have different kids or different cousins or different grandkids. They all need something a little different, but in order for there to be balance, everybody needs what they need. So that means different knowledges, different ways of looking at things are all of equal importance. And part of putting this principle into action is when we make decisions in this psychedelic boom or psychedelic culture, is to really think about unintended consequences. And that's a discipline that ecologists often have to go through, is if I'm looking at creating a change in a system, there may be the change that I'm looking for, there may be the barriers to that change, but also am I looking at what the unintended consequences would be? And so that's something that we've found to be incredible importance in policy decisions, business decisions everywhere. And then also as an ecologist, we're always looking to understand, we hear that word sustainability, the abilities to sustain ourselves, and how do we create the resiliency that will enable that. And if we're all interconnected, it means all of us have to have that resiliency. And that requires taking a long look And like we've been hearing this morning, maybe slowing down. Sometimes when we want to forge ahead with something really quickly, and we haven't thought about the unintended consequences, we forget to think about what is this going to be like 100 years from now, or even 300 years from now. And so that's another place where ecology really guides us to be able to hear what Indigenous wisdom is telling us. And of course, I'm biased, but I believe it's true. This means we have to do biocultural conservation in all of our efforts. We need to make sure that the territories, the plants, and the ecosystems where these sacred plants, consciousness plants, power plants, whatever you all want to call them, are there for the future, and that the people who have relied on them have that access. And I really wanted to share something that has helped me a lot, and I think helps a lot of ecologists and ecological designers think about how to engage in change. And the kind of pet phrase that we use is in ecological design is pato, which is also duck in Spanish, but it's protracted and thoughtful observation. And so the thought, listening to you, Mona, here this morning was that all of us could really benefit from slowing down to really, really do observation. And part of observation is listening. So within the Nagoya protocols that Mona mentioned, there's this concept, and sometimes it's been used and sometimes it gets skipped, of free, prior, and informed consent. And so what would it look like if we, in all of our endeavors, whether they're legal or otherwise, or we actually slowed down enough to do a thorough listening, a thorough consent process, one that actually benefits the communities that we're listening to and creates more resiliency within them. And so again, just those concepts of interconnectedness, respect, listening thoroughly and for a good amount of time, and thinking about future resiliency of all of the people who are part of our ecosystem, family, that we're in relationships with. And so just with my ecology hat on, I wanted to share that that's how I hear some of what I hear from you, Mona, and others when they talk to us about how to proceed in this effort, which is a healing effort of psychedelic culture. And so I'm going to pass it back to you. That's what I had to share. Oh, I'll share one more thing. I want to share one more thing. It was really interesting this morning, and this is just like an emerging piece of listening. This morning, we received a statement from a Shipibo organization offering to help do some consultation about what's happening in the United States. No judgment, not bad, not good, around having churches use ayahuasca, or new churches use ayahuasca, and they offered to and wanted us to share that they would be willing, if there's support for it, and support means just a little gas, coffee money, to go around and collect thoughts and things from folks. So that's an example of listening in action today.
Thank you so very much. We're gonna take questions from the audience, if anyone has any. Do we have? Can you come up to the microphone if you have a question, please? So that you can be filmed.
Hi, I'm Mona. I'm a biologist. 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 I'm a biologist Hi. So, I'm a little emotional. That was really amazing. And my question is, so I've worked with ayahuasca in the past, and the medicine directed us to share, share me. It was like, I want to grow, I want to, and so I'm sort of like, I've went back into learning and got a doctorate and now it's back. Like the medicine, it's like, okay, come to the conference, you need to be, back involved. So my question is, how do we move forward? I mean, I know you're saying listen, and yet also the medicine wants to be acknowledged. It wants to heal. It wants to be used. And so it's sort of like this struggle between growth and then we're talking about like major, people who are trying to make money on this. That's a whole nother area where the sacred is sort of can be ignored. And so we need to be careful. So I'm confused. I'm confused about the messages from the medicine and the messages from the ancients and the indigenous and the earth. And so my question is, how do we move forward?
Yes, the medicine does communicate with you. The medicine will, communicate with you and give you some message. But that doesn't mean what you must do is take the time to process that message and how it's shared. What has happened is that people hear that message and then assume that I'm the prophet, I'm the missionary to go out and share it like a minister. That is not the way we go is we have a person who has been trained and who is the practitioner, so to speak. They know how to give instructions. They know that relationship with the medicine. And that's what's being left out because of the Eurocentric approach that we've experienced here on Turtle Island of Christianity coming in and taking control rather than allowing the original people to be the ones to share in the way that we share. It should be what we call the medicine people. They should be the ones to continue to have that role and responsibility. That's the way we as Indigenous people see it. Not every Indigenous person is a medicine man or woman. We have that sort of like it's an honor, it's a very special gift. It's not for everybody to be that kind of a person. And that's how, I believe, that's how we've been able to keep these ways in order, because there's order to it, including, like as I mentioned, the harvesting of it, the growing of it, where it grows, all those things. It's an order, it's a sacred order. And we also, one of the things that I said when I went to an ayahuasca ceremony, Santo Daime ceremony, and the leader asked me who was a non-native, non-indigenous person leading the ceremony, said to me, You sing such beautiful peyote songs. Will you sing a peyote song? I said, no. This medicine, the ayahuasca, comes from a long line of tradition. I'm not going to be one who is going to break that line. That ceremony you're doing, it has a long line of tradition from some indigenous practitioner. I'm not going to sing my peyote songs in this ceremony because peyote songs are for peyote, not for ayahuasca. So, those are some of the ways that, in my discussions with people has been. Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Yes, come on up.
Bonjour, hi Mona, hi Miriam, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. My question is a little related to the last question. Do you think, in terms of psychedelic culture, that it is the actual medicines that need to be shared, or the indigenous way of life and knowledge that needs to be shared?
That's a difficult question to answer because I'm not, I don't know what psychedelic culture is. Right. It's a totally, to me, sort of, it kind of makes me think of a mind thing. When, for us indigenous people, it's not just a mind thing, it's a whole thing. It's from the root within Mother Earth as it emerges and reaches all of these divine creations of life. And that becomes, that we use and we partake of it. It becomes part of us within our whole being. So that's, in our indigenous relationship with these medicines, it's that, again, it's all part of a cycle. And our connection with Mother Earth. And so, but as far as psychedelic culture is concerned, I couldn't even begin to create any kind of comparison. There's no comparison of indigenous practice with these medicines to what I'm seeing in the psychedelic boom or movement. I don't know if that answered your question, but thank you.
Something that came up for me from the last two questions, that in doing water work, where I spent a lot of time doing pre-policy work, where you actually do a lot of work and consultation ahead of passing laws so that there's more agreement or making changes, whether they're community-based or otherwise, is that in order to do good consultative processes around something like water, which I think is similar to something like medicines, you have to explore responsibility along with rights. So rights is really only a part of what you have to understand, and talking about rights without talking about responsibility is very tricky, because if you proceed with just my rights to have something or take something or use something, and that's not done in conversation with responsibility, and what does that mean to take something or use something? Like in water, it's always, well, if I use this for this new housing development or new type of agriculture, what does that mean for fish? What does that mean for rivers? What does that mean for water quality? And so how do we balance that conversation between my right to something and my responsibility to something. And it seems like that's a place to begin with some of these kind of learnings that we're having.
This has been beautiful. So much appreciation and thanks. Please help me thank Miriam Volat and grandmother Mona Polacca.